thirdly, and very important to me, um, I've always been the youngest in life. I was always the youngest in kindergarten, the youngest in high school, the youngest at university, the youngest to go to China. And so I was always, in my mind, I'm always the eternal student. And all of a sudden, I'm in this somewhat strange situation where you are in the senior position, where you all of a sudden have this not just seniority but the responsibility that comes with it, and where people mention your name in prefaces of books, and I'm always like, what are you talking about? It's very strange to get old when you think you're not old yet. So, but anyway, it's very clearly, even though I have the illusion that I'm not old yet, very clearly my teachers have grown very old and very frail. And in my mind, when I practice my Qigong and when I teach, right here, they are right there with me when I met them. Dr. Wang was, when I walked up to his door and I said, "Can I be your student?" He was at the height of his vigor. It was just at the time when he was about 50 some years old or so, 52 years old, and he was just, treating the Prime Minister, treating all these gold medal athletes at the Olympics, and being very hung, as the Chinese say, very red, just like his light was shining, and so it's hard for me to see people like that seemingly immortal and have this limitless amounts of energy. Laurie and Bill will remember that one trip in '96, which was one of the most hardcore trips we ever did, where we were started in Xi'an. We took the overnight train. Shifu met us on the train. We were supposed to go to a place in the mountains because I was insisting I didn't want any air conditioning, and no, it had to be, we wanted to be remote. We have to hike in for 3 days and stay in peasant houses. It was that kind of a hardcore kind of a trip. And so Shifu said, "Oh, these people, they gonna kill us. We go in there. They already told me, oh, we paved the road just for you." He said that means they gonna ask us for like tens of thousands of dollars, otherwise we can't leave there. We're not going to go there. So it was like, so on the spur of a moment, he said, "This morning I had tea with these people, and we're just going to hire these buses and go to this completely different place." And it was this harrowing journey, like along, they had just dug the road. It was a place where pirates used to live, and there was only, like, the people, you ask people in there, "Have you ever seen a foreigner?" They would say, yeah, 5 years ago there was this guy from Shanghai. That was like a foreign countryside. So it was like this kind of a place, and we were like this close to the cliff the entire time, and the drivers were these kind of 22-year-old guys racing each other, and bumping into the cliffside, and we had Carol Warner, who is a former alumni, just constantly like chanting mantras.
She was yelling at you.
And what?
She was yelling at you to tell the bus driver to slow down. And Sherpa was like doing the mantras.
And that was just the beginning, and then we were like going to Jiuzhaigo, which was just opening. David was just there. Now it's like has an airport and is a tourist attraction.
Exactly.
And this was like exactly 20 years ago, when we were like literally, we were driving on this path, a back road that was like a moonscape, and everybody was on the road already 22 hours, and I hear the driver like, "Fuck!" And I like look out the window, and it's like the front wheel is like over the cliff, and there's like the Yangtze River like 450 feet gurgling in the gorge, and he was like pumping into the gear, and it's like lurching forward. Luckily, everybody was like still jet lagged and asleep, and so then the bus was breaking down, and we like the wolves howling in the distance. It's like us sleeping like on the cement floor at this road, like at 12,000 feet. And Shifu is like having like this, putting this handkerchief over his, people are all worried. And Wang Shifu is the oldest and, if anything, the sickest of us. He kind of rallies everybody and says like, this is life, It's like, if you don't know if you eat candy all the time, then you eat a piece of licorice and it's going to be bitter to you, This is the tasting bitter, like what we do right now. That's the real experience. And so these are moments that the people who've been there will never forget that. And so for me to see this man who's like so alive and so inspiring, and like the very first time, Shifu was very conservative. He let me wait a year and a half before he taught me anything. And so the very first year and a half, I studied with this other Qigong master who was fulfilling the Western picture. It's like his hair was down to here, and he had this band with a Tai Chi right here, and he was having these golden clothes on with dragons and stitched the top of it, and he was like teaching in the temple, and he was teaching. He was also teaching called Eme Zhen Gong. It was a kind of Eme type of Qigong. But that guy was like a total creep. He's one of those kind of people where, it's like, oh, I'm going to give you a massage session, and then all of a sudden you open up your eyes as a girl, and he stands there in his underwear, and so it's or he had a business going in the U.S. where he said, I'm the International Federation of something, Qigong something or other, and told some Chinese immigrants that were sort of there semi-legally that if he would give them a piece of paper that said that they are a professor in this institution, that they could get a green card, and he said that would be $10,000, and then they discovered it was a worthless piece of paper. And so that's, I don't know what you were talking about, but those kinds of experiences, unfortunately.
I thought the between the silk sheets exorcism, you remember that one?
Yeah, you want to...
This is at Breitenbush.
Breitenbush Hot Springs. Navel of the New Age world.
And he diagnosed one of the more attractive young women as being severely possessed, and said he needed, 20 yards of pure red silk in order to exorcise her. So somebody had to be sent back to Portland to buy the red silk. This is right.
That's
correct. And so in the middle of the floor in that big room in Breitenbush, he puts her naked under the two sheets of red silk, and the rest of us are supposed to make noises and thrash around and help drive out the spirits.
And then he takes this giant brush, like this calligraphy brush, and he draws like something on her body. So, about that. It did the trick. The guy was good. He was playing into the pictures of what people wanted to see about Chinese culture. It was half real and half made up, But he had a good sense of shamanism and giving people what they thought they wanted. But when I organized, because I was grateful, because he helped me in my own sense of, I went to China because I had the cancer as a young man, and I was grateful he was teaching me. It did help me, so I helped to get him to the United States. But then the very first trip, this is how it all started, was in '94. He asked me to organize for his students from LA. And once we went to China, I had co-invested actually into this temple-like structure in Mount Qingcheng, all of a sudden there were 400 Chinese people there. And I had said, if I bring people there, you cannot have like other people there. That wouldn't be fair to people coming from afar who pay a lot of money. And what he had done, he had taken out an ad in the newspaper telling people there will be foreigners, you can talk business, and you can get married to some of them. So all of a sudden you have 400 people there, and he's telling us, oh, these are all my students. I didn't tell them, but they just couldn't help themselves. They had to come to see the master. And then he didn't teach anything. He was there, so we were like in a place that's good for 40 people. He had 400 people. And so what he did was he would organize people in caves around and said, oh, I'm teaching you the super secretive thing, and you have to be meditating in the cave, and there wasn't enough food, so he said, we're going to fast, and so he could save some money. And then he didn't teach anything. He just he sat on some kind of a chair with some dragon throne, and everybody would kind of worship him, and then next days and burning incense. And after about 2 days of this, I'm like, even though these are not my students, I'm like, I won't have any of this. So I gave Shifu a call, and Shifu and Shimu, at that time already close to 60, they came up with Shimu having heart disease. They immediately, so this is real Kung Fu, practice. When I studied with Shifu, I had to take an oath, that thunder and lightning might strike me if I do not, conduct myself properly in carrying this lineage. And he swears an oath that thunder and lightning might strike him if he doesn't come to the disciples' aid. And so he immediately came there. That night it was a bad storm, like a hurricane, and he had to be like under an awning at the base of the temple, and he had to stand there underneath the waiting for the rain to clear all night long, and then he came up and taught us while this guy was continuing his stuff there. So Shifu was totally disgusted and said, let's just learn something real. And this is kind of percolated down to now, but Shifu had injured himself, his back very badly about 7 years ago, and was on his back and literally paralyzed for a year. And since that time he's recovered, but he looks much more frail. And he's turned 79, or in the Chinese way of counting 80 this year. And so this is my time to give back, where it's the time when you feel like, oh, you're not the child anymore. You've grown up, and you need, your parents or your shifu needs to rely on you. And in this case, for him, it's a tremendous energy boost for us to know that there is Jinjin Gong in the curriculum at NCNF. There is no formal Jinjin Gong teaching in China itself. And to have you all come from that far, have you all know his name, some of you met him before, it's just a real, that alone, that's one of the reasons for me, for this year especially with Bill and Sharon and Lori and Tammy, to come have almost all of the American disciples here is a very special event. When Shifu comes or so, we want to learn to... Shifu is, of course, the last person who cares about etiquette, and he's a rather wild person. He's more like a Tibetan. He lived 10 years in Tibet. So he's not formal at all. However, it's the polite thing to be like water as the student, So we've already, many of us studied the Qigong forms at NCNM, and we've kind of, after many, many years, we've kind of formalized it. So we always do it this way, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we shake, and then we do this, and then we pound the lung, and the Wang Shifu is, while he at some point taught us this way, he doesn't always do it this way. Particularly now, when he's at this age, he's, who knows where his mind is. So we'll follow what he does. So don't just do your own thing. What he does, we'll do. Okay, and the